This week on a special edition of Our World with Black Enterprise, equal justice. Is there a double standard in the judicial system?
No justice, no peace.
One for whites and one for blacks. That explosive issue is up next. Last month, Michael Bell, the last of the Jena 6 defendants, was released after thousands of people descended on the small Louisiana town demanding justice. This summer in New York, a 24-year-old black male is being prosecuted on first-degree assault charges, despite videotaped evidence showing that he was brutally attacked by 8 white males. This year also saw people take up the cause of a 20-year-old Georgia man who was sentenced to 10 years in prison without parole for having consensual sex with a 15-year-old white girl, an offense that garnered an aggravated charge of child molestation, even though he was 17 at the time of the incident. These are just 3 cases that are causing many to ask if there is still a double standard in the judicial system, and is the inequality fueled by race? Joining us today to discuss equal justice in America is journalist George Curry. Eleanor Tatum is publisher and editor-in-chief of the New York Amsterdam News, and talk show host and personality and activist, we should know, Joe Madison joins us. I thank you all for joining us. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
George, let's talk a little bit about what we saw in Jena, Louisiana, and what this means present day. We were talking off camera as to whether or not this is, what was your phrase, Joe? I don't want to steal it from you.
Whether it was an event or a movement.
An event or a movement. You were on the ground. What do you see it as at this point?
Well, I saw it as a reawakening for young people. For many of them, this is the first time they got a chance to participate in protests like that. And it was actually heartwarming. The numbers, kind of like the Million Man March, you know, the numbers were underestimated. I think there were close to 100,000 people there. And they had lied about the numbers, Million Man March. But there were a lot of people there expressing outrage. And people give credit to Al Sharpton, Mike Baisden, and Jesse Jackson, Charles Steele. And they played important roles. But whether it was Imus or this case, a lot of this came from the grassroots. People just being enraged. And that fueled the whole event.
Eleanor, what's interesting is we heard from Barack Obama a few months ago talking about quiet riots and the idea that this nation really has not been awakened to the point that there are a lot of people, particularly the underclass, that it's sick and tired of, as we like to say, being sick and tired. Mm. How much is black America not hearing that call themselves?
Well, I think one of the things is that the generations before me hoped that they had already fought the fight, and that they didn't really instill in us the same way the protest. And so I think young people are just trying to figure it out again now. And I think they are now on the road to saying, okay, enough is enough. And I am very much hoping that this protest is the beginning. It is an event, but let's hope it moves into a movement.
Joe, how much of the movement is going to have to do with leadership? I think one of the things that was brilliantly done by Michael Baisden, we give him kudos, but yourself, Steve Harvey, Tom Joyner, everyone joined together to give this clarion call. But one of the things that Michael did that we don't often see is he called out black leadership and said, look, we're not going to have you saying that I've got to be the one that opens this conference, I've got to be the one to do this, I've got to be the one to do that. We have to see that kind of accountability from black leadership to really see this thing move, do we not?
Well, you do, but you won't. I mean, there's always the personality tugs that go back and forth, and these are just that's part of the undercurrent. What impressed me the most about this was that you really couldn't finger any one particular leader. This was really young people's tool, and that was the Internet. It was the texting. They were text messaging each other from campus to campus, interneting each other. And so here you had an event that had really taken off before the quote-unquote leadership got on board. And that was the fascinating thing, and I think that's what you're going to see more of.
I think it's put in context. You know, you can't look at Jena by itself. I think it started with affirmative action, those students spending the night on Supreme Court steps, certainly the Dom Imus case, and now this. I think you put them all in there together, and you see, and our leaders get a lot of credit, and they deserve a lot of credit.
Well, you also have to add Sean Bell in there.
Hold on, let me finish. Not by themselves, though. And that's the thing I think get overlooked. You really do, and Joe hit it right, you really underestimate the power of the movement of people without the leadership, but the leadership benefits.
What were you saying?
We also have to add the Sean Bell case into that. All these things that have happened this summer, all of the incidents, everything has just added to the fury. And young people are finally saying it is time for us to do something, to take matters into our own hands, so to speak, and restart a movement.
This is how every movement gets started. You see, young people could relate to this because each of them saw themselves in all these cases that you talked about. I have to tell my young son, you got to watch what you say when you go out, because be careful, the police will pull you over. You're going to get hit driving while black. And we have to tell our children that. White America doesn't have to tell their children that. There's a case right now in Baltimore. Young 24-year-old black male who bounced a check got 30 years in jail. And he has the money to make the check good, but they won't let him out of jail so he can go get the money to make the check good.
So, George, where is it that we start to put all of these things to light, to bring it to light? As I said, it didn't get a whole lot of traction. Right. But Obama did talk about quiet riots. He did try to bring the idea that there's a lot of stuff going on in America that's this undercurrent that's not sizzling yet, but boiling slowly.
Well, it's been going on for a while. I think that I can trace it back to these mandatory sentences. You know, we did a lot with the Emerge magazine with Kimball Smith and the whole bit. But once you had the Len Bias death, the University of Maryland player who got drafted #1 by the Celtics, led by Tip O'Neill, they said, hey, we're going to get these tough laws there. No sparing the rod, no change from judges, and we're going to have these tough sentences that judge can't deviate from. And we see the growth in incarceration rate, and we see the disparity in crack cocaine sentences, and I think that's kind of started us down this road.
Let me also add something. We're coming up on the 40th anniversary of the Kerner Commission report. Now, for a lot of young people, they may not even know what the Kerner Commission is. And you know, if you'd have told me 40 years ago that in the year 2007 there would not be one African-American male anchoring or female anchoring a news program on network TV, I'd have said you were crazy, given the direction we were going in. The unemployment rate in New York City is what, as I was reading in your paper, is among 18 to 35-year-olds is 50+%. African Americans, 54.6%, are making no more than making $12 or less an hour. Obama calls it a quiet riot. The Kerner Commission called it something else and said if we didn't address it, then we've got a potential riot on our hands. And I don't want to sound that alarm, but review that Kerner Commission.
Let me take a break here, because if you talk about foreboding and talk about the Kerner Commission, you talk about Daniel Patrick Moynihan's statements years ago. Some say it wasn't taken well because it was a white man who called that, but nonetheless, much of what he talked about did come to fruition. We'll talk about that and much, much more. Equal justice in America, is it real? We'll be back. Special edition, just a moment.
A shoving match in the school. Black and white kids hitting each other. Only the black kids were charged. It's racial, it's unfair.
Our headliner has been brought to you by Chevy, an American Revolution.